Hello, hello, hello. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Looks like it's going great so far. Hope everyone's having a good Wednesday morning or Wednesday afternoon, depending on where you are. Yeah, today's going to be pretty straightforward. This is really to just explain UX design, really what it is, and really be able to take this video and disseminate it out. You know what I mean? Really be able to take this recording and just pass it along. See what else out there, ask your questions, be able to come back to this, get a good point of reference, and help anybody else out in the future. Yeah. So really the main question here is UX designers, what are they? What does it mean to be a UX designer? Where do I fit in? What do I do? That kind of a thing. And it's pretty straightforward. UX designers, we're just the natural problem solvers of the team. So in terms of the software engineering world, there are always people that are going to be focused on different aspects of the game, and the game being whatever software product or the actual game that you're creating. For instance, there's going to be the business side of the folks that are going to really be focused on like the marketing, sales, that sort of a pitch aspect, whatever is going to return revenue. And there's going to be the development side of thing where the developers are going to be sitting there trying to figure out, okay, what aspect of this is actually like usable? Can I build this? I know you're promising all these things, but can we actually deliver on these things? What even is the promise that we can make to begin with? That sort of a thing. And then the UX designer are really the ones that kind of have to play goalie and sort of keep the fences, in the sense that you're sitting there going, okay, I know you want to do this from a business perspective, and I know that this is possible from a development perspective. Do these things make sense to do at all? Or is this just something cool that you want to do? Because a whole UX designer's job is, if no one's asking for it, don't make it. There's no point. We are really just trying to make sure that we're not doing redundant work. And so you might have to say like, oh, it sounds like you've got a little bit of power and sway. And it's really more along the lines of, where do I fit in with this? As a UX designer, where do you fit in the world? And now, your team may look a little different than this, but this is basically the structure of most software engineering or product development teams. From an organizational standpoint, you got your chief technology officer, chief information officer, whoever is the head of technology for your company at the top. Underneath them, you typically got two branches. So you typically got someone that's in charge of product, and then you got someone in charge of development, because those things tend to have incorporate vastly different responsibilities and duties. So for instance, on a product, you have people like the director of shared services, which usually shared services is just a broad spoken term that's used to describe things like quality assurance, UX design, scrum masters, product owners, project managers, just really anybody that was probably going to be supporting multiple different teams at a time. And so they're not necessarily going to be dependent to one specific group. And whereas on the flip side, you have like on the head of development, you have like director of software engineering, and then underneath them, it's a lot more streamlined. You just have the individual teams and really like an engineering manager to handle multiple teams themselves. And the teams are really comprised of a very similar structure to actually the UX design team, because you see there's a lot of crossover between UX design and software engineering. A lot of the practices that can be done in one can actually be applied to the other. So for instance here, if we look at the organizational structure at this, whereas UX design typically have like a head of UX or a lead UX designer, software engineering also has a head of engineering or lead engineer, which sits at the top of their team's list. Underneath them, there's typically one, maybe two senior position people. And then beneath them, there's again potentially one or two actual like mid-level, like people that have been there. And to make a quick distinction between junior, senior, and mid, it's really based on a couple of different things. The easiest way to comprise that, to look at it from a point of view of like years of experience. So for instance, a senior is probably looking at this point 5+ years of experience. So we're thinking like 5 to 7 years or above to really sort of begin that like senior process. Mid-level, someone in that 3 to 5 year range. Juniors, obviously someone that could just be starting out, or ideally has at least like 1 or 2 years of experience under their belt, just so that way they can integrate quickly with the team. Now, being a junior designer is often very scary. It was terrifying for me when I first got into it. But one of the things that makes it a lot easier is the fact that being a part of the UX design, same thing like with software engineering, is there is a lot of like self-control that you can do, a lot of projects you can do on your own, and you can really do things to highlight yourself beyond needing to be a part of a project. You can just make up designs. You can just do whatever you want. And to be honest with you, just fucking lie. Make up a project, make up a team, make up a company, have a buddy who'll be willing to vouch for it, have him as your only point of contact, and say the startup failed. It happens every single day. And it's just a matter of life. It doesn't show. It doesn't really matter. It's a real experience that you can put on your resume to be able to at least help you get in the door. This is the most ridiculous thing ever, to try to sit there and bang your head against the wall when you have no experience, and just sit there and go, why can't I get a job? Just to add more experience, just lie. In this day and age, most of the jobs, we're going to teach you how to do that job anyways, because most people want it done in a specific way. Make sure you know terminology. Make sure you do your research. Make sure you actually can do the position you're applying for, but you can eliminate that barrier to entry of that work experience by being able to either create projects on your own or just fucking lie. Just put yourself as that. It's a great point of reference. One of the things that happens is, as we're looking at this team structure, you start to notice that the senior, UX, mid-level, and junior, there's not necessarily a hierarchy that exists between these people in terms of like one is directly reporting to the other. They all report up to the head of UX. But you'll start to notice that there is an informal hierarchy in the sense that this is just who you go to for questions. A lot of times the juniors will just naturally go to a UX designer or like a mid-level above them to be able to get an answer rather than going straight to like the head of UX. A lot of times too, they have a senior that's very open and cooperative, then they'll just go straight to the senior, and the senior sets the time aside to be able to actually answer those questions, because that's what you should. As a senior level person, you should be a resource for juniors and mid-levels to come to be able to grow as the entirety of the team, because ideally you would love to be able to be a part of a team that has that is secretly all seniors, and you're just waiting for them to get promoted. If you want everybody performing at a senior level, then it's great. Now, what does it look like in terms of like what you're actually going to be doing the job? Because you're not going to be existing like this. You're not going to be existing in this siloed off teams, and siloing is that term that we use in terms of like staying off on your own and not really interacting with anybody. This is shared services. Remember, I said that shared services interacts with a bunch of different teams. So your structure is going to look more like this, where you're going to be sitting there a part of a software development team, where you're just going to be you, a software engineer, a quality assurance person, a scrum master, business analyst, project manager. A lot of these can be swapped in and out. It's really up to the company and the organization of that team, but it's going to look something like this. Probably multiple software engineers just to help deal with the ticket load, that kind of a thing. So you're going to be referring to a multidisciplined team pretty often. Same thing as you're probably going to be part of much smaller, more hyper-focused teams. You're going to be a part of something that's like a project management team, where as a project manager or as a project management team, you're really going to be looking at like the backlog of tickets, like the work that is yet to be done, and really prioritizing what needs to be done. Because you as a UX designer, again, going back to your original focus, you're trying to solve a problem. If people have an answer to ask for this thing, you shouldn't put any effort behind it. So you're looking at what people are asking for and prioritizing those things that people are actually asking for. Now, there are always going to be moments in time where you're sitting there going, I desperately need this thing done. But the business, the development team, whatever the case may be, they just decide that it's not going to be feasible for this time period. You're just not going to be able to actually get that accomplished, which sucks. But, it is the way that it is. There's a lot of ups and downs to the software engineering world. This is kind of one of those downs, but you have to stick with it, is to keep fighting through it, because you do get those victories. You do get to be able to force change. And what ends up happening more than likely is that, you'll be in the project management team, you'll push for a specific ticket. The project manager will go, we're not going to prioritize that right now. But you'll find through talking with a software engineer that he's actually working on a ticket that kind of already touches this area. So you go, hey, while you're there, let's explore this a little bit. It's already a ticket, and since you're in that area, you think you can wrap that in there. They might be able to bring it in and tap it in there. Don't try to add work on the software engineer, but ask them. Have that open line of communication. Be receptive to if they say no. Sometimes you got to eat the bullet, but other times you can work things out and you can get things accomplished. It takes some active effort, though. You can't just sit back and then expect work to get done, which is the fun and unfortunate part of this. And then you do get to have way more fun with certain things like the UI team. And if you're more on the design side of things, for instance, like I am. So you get to then focus on a lot more stuff of like, how does this actually look? What does this actually feel like to interact with? How do we use this? And then you can really do a lot of the fun stuff where you get to play around and create the interfaces that everyone sees and goes crazy for online. You know, I see all these videos of people creating these wild animations at Figma and whatnot, and they look fantastic, but they're impossible. You'll never be able to get a developer to make them because it's just too much work. It's just too much work. So this is again where you work with like a front-end engineer to work on both feasibility and scope. So this is like the balance that you're always having to play as a UX designer is between the feasibility, how possible it is for something to actually get done, and then the scope, which is just how much time do we have to do this. And you know, you're oftentimes going, we can do this, but we don't have the time, or we got all the time in the world. It's just not possible to do that at this point in time, and you have to make those trade-offs. It's really easy. It's not the end of the world. But what do you do when you're on your own? And that's really sort of the big thing that a lot of people struggle with, because this is easy. This is checking your ticket, whatever the Jira, you know, at least what's the one, Azure DevOps, whatever the case may be. You're checking your tickets. You're doing your work. You're clocking in essentially and clocking out. But when you don't have tickets or your tickets are open-ended, what do you do? And so there's a lot that you can do. You can do research. You can do design. And you can do writing. Because these are the core discipline principles of UX. There are UX researchers, there are UX designers, and there are UX writers. This is what people do. This is just the discipline that it is. So if you're ever at a point where you've got nothing to design, we're going to research. If you have nothing to research and nothing to design, there's probably some copy that needs to get addressed. If there's nothing to copy, there's no research, then and there's nothing to design, you definitely got to research. If you've done all the research, you've done all the writing, now it's time to put all that information into practice, actually create the design. It's very straightforward. There's a lot of work that you can do just on your own to be able to get brought up to speed, to be able to make your life a lot easier. I know there's a big concept right now of not going beyond what your job description is, and you shouldn't. You should do only what you're paid to do, but you should also not let work stack up and screw you in the end, because that's what happens with work. The way that the companies are built, they purposefully have inefficient structures to be able to build up a backlog of tickets, so that way there's always work to be done. You'll never get caught up, but there are things you can do to make that backlog, that funnel of work, a hell of a lot easier to manage. That's it. That's all I want to say. Thank you guys.